Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video we are straying away from heroes for a little bit so that we can start diving into some of the mystical arts of rallying with a group of people. Why are we doing this? Well, when we rally together, we are trying to defeat something that is stronger than what we can do as an individual player. This could be a zombie lair. This could be another sanctuary. Or this could be a tower or some other stronghold in Water Wars. Something along those lines. And we can't do it as an individual player, so we need to group up and work as a team. When we rally, there are two things that we are trying to accomplish. One, we are trying to win, kick the crap out of whoever it is that we are trying to battle. But number two, we are trying to do that while minimizing the cost of that rally. And what is that cost? That cost would be healing from wounded soldiers. Not only the resources that it costs to heal, but the healing speed ups as well, depending on what type of battle you are playing in. How do we accomplish this? We are going to break this up into two segments. This video here is going to talk about the defensive side, I should say, which would be minimizing cost. So how damage is dealt, how do we reduce damage, and how do we prevent having too extreme of costs when we're rallying. In another video, I will talk about how to build a strong rally setup and what you want to do, because they kind of work together, but there's some differences there. Defensively right now, or basically trying to minimize damage and cost, it's a little bit easier, so hopefully this can help everyone start getting used to what's going on. And it should also answer the question as to why Pat won't let riders into his rally, and why is Webb not letting fighters, and why is Fleeting saying no shooters. Hopefully you've watched my previous videos, and so you've got some basic understanding about formations, because formations plays a part in that. Okay, let's dive into some things. Why do I have a lock screen going on? Okay, let's dive into some things. One of those things is going to be a spreadsheet. Why? Because, well, why not? Let's look at spreadsheets. What I've done here is basically built this to look like a battlefield. This would be in fighter formation, which would mean fighters here are in the front. Okay, and then you notice that the riders are next, and then shooters falling behind, and vehicles are at the very back. That will look familiar if you've watched any of the videos. So, because fighters stand in the front, that means all fighters are attacking first. Damage is dealt to them first. So when you are in this formation, if you are trying to minimize damage and you've got fighters in your rally, you want fighters to be the absolute strongest setup that you can. You want them to be as tough to be able to take as many blows as they possibly can. The way that damage is dealt is the fighters take the damage first, and it will start from T1, then work its way up this way. Okay? So if you've only got T10s, then T10 fighters will be taking the brunt of the damage first. Riders behind the fighters will be kind of protected from the damage. Shooters back further will be protected. If you've got a really good strong wall of fighters here, you can have weaker riders and weaker shooters, and because the fighters are absorbing all the damage, the weaker players don't necessarily take a lot of hits. So they don't cause a lot of damage. They don't cause a lot of wounded. If you're a fighter person and you are trying to lead something, and you're soloing now above a layer 40 where wounded comes back into play or anything like that, basically you want your fighters to be as strong as possible. This is why some of our stronger players will say no fighters, no shooters, no riders. First of all, they're using a formation. So in Pat's case, he's a rider. He will use rider formation, which puts the riders up front. In Fleeting's case, she's shooters. She's using shooter formation, which puts shooters up front. If it's Webb, he's a fighter, so he's running fighter formation. What makes that important is that these people are generally the stronger of our alliance, and they're leading the charge. Their troops are buffed, built up, gone to the gym, they're ripped as shit, so they can take a lot of damage. Any troops who are in behind them aren't going to take a lot of damage. They can be little sissies and just kind of be throwing pebbles and stones and adding to the battle a little bit, but they're not going to cause a lot of damage. Or they're not going to cause a lot of wounded. As I'm explaining this, it feels really confusing. So maybe we should go back and have a look at some game data. Let's go here. Battle logs. Nope. Zombie layers. Let's look at some zombie layers, shall we? So here we have a level 40. I've run it. You can see wounded, very low wounded here. Okay. And there's a good reason for that. We're going to go in. We're going to look at our fighters. Look at how many T10 fighters we have in there. 700,000 T10 fighters. That is a huge buffer of fighters that are going on. We also happen to have Ribsy's in here. 3,000%, 3,600% fighter attack, 2,700 defense, 2,600 HP. Another person, 1,300, a little bit weaker, but still T10. Another person, again, T10. So what's going to happen in this battle here is that the T10s all get grouped up. Everyone's stats get averaged. Overall, the number of troops, fighter troops that we have is a massive number. They're going to get combined to take a lot of damage, even with the average stats, which would be why we don't have a whole lot of wounded. Okay, so this is fighter formation. If you're not sure what formation we're running in, if you look right here beside me, I don't have any formations opened. So when I run the rallies, all my rallies are still fighter formation, even though I am a shooter. This also kind of goes to show that it doesn't necessarily matter who starts the rally when it comes to damage and wounded. What's most important is who's out in front. And that would be who joins the rally. Okay? There's some specific details like that that's important to understand. Let's look at another rally here. Here we go. Massive amount of damage going on in this rally. And if we look, again, it's fighter formation. We can see we've only got some T9 fighters up front. So if we look through, we can see here T9 fighters, not a very strong set of T9 fighters. So the damage is going to flow through the fighters first in this rally, And those T9s not being very strong coming up against T11s, they're just basically getting their ass pummeled. Okay. After the T9s, then we move into the riders. Again, T9 riders, we have a better grouping of them. But so far, I don't think the riders were very strong in this one as well. Yeah. We have one set of riders that's fairly strong, but majority of the damage is dealt to the fighters in this one. With the fighters going down and lots of wounded happening, what happens with wounded is it's a bit deceiving. The calculations will average the wounded. The total wounded gets averaged between every player based on your march size. I don't have a good way of explaining the math on it, but it doesn't matter if you are a rider, shooter, fighter in the rally. It's just if the fighters are weak in a fighter formation, they take a lot of damage, they produce a lot of wounded. So the battlefield is technically full of a bunch of fighters that are sprawled out dead, but the calculations don't show that. It's one of those weird, complex things that I think a lot of people misunderstand, in which the theoretical or logical side of how the battle works in the game versus how it's actually calculated and shows up, they don't match. They're confusing. But you have to understand both of them, and they both work side by side. Let's move on, because it's confusing as hell. Another rally here. Wounded is a little bit less. You can see there's only 3 of us. Again, we have some T10 fighters. Not bad overall strength. Not enough for a 40. Like, that's really low when it comes to trying to attack for a 40. But T10s can absorb some damage, so that is one of the reasons why this whole wounded set is a little bit better. Let's see, total 35,000 casualties in this rally versus 119,000 casualties. So that's where explaining some of this stuff, it's so confusing. But again, it's about who's out in front and who's taking the damage first. Here's another rally that we did. T9s, fighters, but you can see the stats are pretty decently pumped up here for it, so they can absorb some damage. And there's some decent backup behind them doing some damage back. The tricky thing about all of this is how morale plays into it. When we watch a battle, it's going to happen. So morale works based on time. So every time you see a fighter up in the front row swing his axe, that is a round in the battle. Okay? So battles are laid out like in rounds, and that's how the morale works. Is so if my rally takes a chance of fighting, so one swing, then the zombie layer takes a swing. That's a round. That round does a certain amount of damage. That damage gets filtered into fighters first, how much ever they absorb, how much ever that moves through. How it calculates the wounded, it calculates the potential for kills. Um, then you see the next swing, and then the next swing, and that kind of. The one thing in this game that it doesn't give you is any way to count how many rounds that a battle happens in order to determine where morale wins and things like that. Unfortunately, morale and how many rounds it plays a part in things. I think I'm going to cut this video off because even as I'm sitting here trying to explain it, I'm starting to confuse the crap out of myself. Um, this stuff, one of the reasons this video has been taking me so long is how do I peel all of this open to help everybody understand it? There's things going on in rallies that are too complicated to really simplify. Multiple things take place at a time, and they all need to work at the same time, and it all needs to kind of flow together in order to work. Hopefully this video will at least drum up more questions that people can send me private messages about, so that I can use some of that feedback in order to help make things a little bit more clear and understandable for people. Figure maybe this video is just a good foot to get a conversation rolling here about how damage is dealt and that. Yeah, that's all for now.